AITA for buying my bankrupt ex's building after his mom called me a failure? The pen was cold, an insignificant object of silver-plated metal and sober lines that now weighed in my hand like a brick. Before me, on the pristine mahogany surface of the library desk in the Harrington townhouse, the document waited. Divorce settlement agreement. The black letters danced slightly before my eyes. I was not in my home, I never had been. This mansion in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, with its high ceilings and smells of clean linen and old money, had always been Eleanor's kingdom, her territory. And I, Elena Vargas, had only been a fortunate intruder for 5 years. Come on, Elena, we do not have all day. The voice of Derek, my soon-to-be ex-husband, came from the leather armchair by the unlit fireplace. He was not looking at me. He was staring at his phone screen with a faint grimace of boredom. It is just paper. Sign it and you can go. Simple. Simple. How to undo a life. How to let go of late-night plans, of the dream of a family that never came. How to erase with a single stroke the years when I believed that love could bridge the distance between his golden cradle and my humble, yet dignified, apartment in Astoria, Queens. He is right, Derek. Elena. Eleanor Harrington did not bother to hide her impatience. She stood by the bookshelf filled with unread books, clad in an impeccable linen suit. Her eyes, the color of gray ice, scrutinized me from head to toe, lingering on my simple dress, on my hands now bare of the jewelry she herself had classified as family loans. Dragging this out longer than necessary will not give you more dignity. On the contrary, it only confirms what I have always known. I gripped the pen tighter. And what is it you have always known, Eleanor? My voice sounded firmer than I expected. She offered a thin, contempt-laden smile. That you were a mistake, a whim of my son's. A lucky girl from the neighborhood who thought that marrying a Harrington would let her climb to where she never belonged. But blood always finds its own level, my dear. You are what you are. She made a vague gesture that encompassed the library, the house, their entire opulent existence. This was never for you. You were just playing house for a while. Derek sighed, annoyed. Mother, please do not be dramatic. I am not being dramatic. I am telling the truth. Eleanor took a few steps closer, her expensive perfume invading the little air I had left. Look at her, Derek. Look at what is left. Do you think that after this, after being a Harrington's wife and losing everything, anyone will look at her? Any real man with a name and a future? She let out a dry, sharp laugh. You will never find anyone better than my son. Never. And you know what? He will find someone better than you. Younger, from a better family, someone who knows how to be his equal. Who is going to want you now, Elena? Tell me who. Every word was a nail hammered into my heart, into my mind, into the last bastion of my self-respect. I looked at Derek, searching, perhaps for the last time, for a spark of protest, of humanity. I found only indifference. He nodded slightly, as if his mother's venomous words were simple, uncomfortable truths. The attorney, Mr. Richard Klein, a serious man with a professional demeanor, cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Harrington, these types of comments are not helpful to the proceedings. Elena, if you would be so kind. The signature lines are marked with stickers. I tore my gaze away from Eleanor's cruel triumph and fixed it on the paper. I saw my name. Elena Vargas Harrington. Soon just Elena Vargas again. I took a deep breath, holding back the tremor that wanted to take over my hand, my entire body. I would not cry, not in front of them. I would not give them that final pleasure. I pressed the tip of the pen to the first yellow sticker. The scratch of ink on paper was the loudest sound in the room. I signed. One signature, then another on every page, renouncing rights, assets, a future that was already in the past. Each stroke was a farewell. To the naive woman who believed in a fairy tale, to the one who endured silent dinners and pitying glances, to the one who tried, always in vain, to earn the affection of the woman who now watched me with victorious disdain. The last signature. I let go. The pen rolled across the table, making a dull sound. It is done, I said, standing up. My legs against all odds held me. Excellent, said Mr. Klein, quickly gathering the documents. The court will issue the final decree shortly. That was all. But Eleanor was not finished. She moved closer, until I could see every wrinkle her contempt had etched around her mouth. Do not forget to leave the keys. The house keys, the car keys, the one Derek bought, of course. And that ugly ring you were wearing. Everything stays here. As it should be. All of your things are already in the entryway, Eleanor, I replied, keeping my voice low and flat. I do not want anything that carries your mark. Not even the memories. Derek finally looked up from his phone. He looked at me, and for a second, just 1 second, I thought I saw something like remorse, a shadow of the man I had fallen in love with. But it vanished instantly, replaced by weary irritation. There is no need to be dramatic, Elena. It was a chapter. We all move on with our lives. Yes, I murmured. You with yours, me with the ruins of mine. Very fair. I turned around. There was nothing more to say. I walked toward the library door, feeling their eyes on my back like daggers. Remember my words, Elena? Eleanor sang at my back with the false sweetness of someone giving a poisoned blessing. No one will want you. No one. You are damaged goods. You were little enough before, and now you are less than nothing. A divorced woman without a penny to her name. Good luck out there, darling. I opened the door and stepped out into the marble foyer. There, next to the grand oak door, was my suitcase. A single small one, with the little I had brought to this place and even less that I had accumulated in 5 years. It was not theirs, it was mine. I gripped it tightly. The butler, an older man named Henry who sometimes gave me a furtive look of solidarity, opened the door for me without meeting my eyes. The cold New York afternoon air hit my face. It was like a slap, but a good one that woke me up. I breathed deeply, filling my lungs with air that did not smell of Harrington, of oppression, of contempt. A taxi was waiting on the street, called by Sophie, my one and only true friend from Chicago. Where to, ma'am? The driver asked. Before getting in, I turned back one last time. The mansion stood imposing and cold, a mausoleum of my mistake. From the library window, I could just make out Eleanor's silhouette watching my departure. I got into the taxi. The door closed with a solid, definitive thud. Ma'am, the driver insisted. To LaGuardia Airport, please, I said. And my voice no longer trembled. It sounded hollow, worn but firm. I have a flight to catch. The taxi pulled away, taking me from that life, from those people, from those words that like rusty nails had been driven into my flesh. No one will want you. Who is going to want you? You are less than nothing. I looked out the window as Manhattan passed by, gray and indifferent. The tears at last arrived. Silent, hot, relentless. They were not tears for Derek. That love had died months, years ago. They were tears for me, for the Elena who had been lost in there, for the humiliation, for the rage that was beginning to simmer, slow but sure, beneath the pain. Eleanor was right about one thing. I was no longer the same. The woman who left that house was not the naive girl from Astoria who had entered it full of hope. That woman had died in the library, signing her own sentence. What left, what was in this taxi heading toward a plain and an unknown future, was something else. It was an ember, a core of pain and anger. And deep inside, a spark, a tiny tenacious spark of something that neither Eleanor with all her contempt, nor Derek with all his indifference, had been able to extinguish, the desire to prove them wrong. No one will want me, right, Eleanor? I whispered to myself, wiping the tears with the back of my hand. Maybe. But starting today, I am going to learn to want myself. And that is going to have to be enough. The plane took off for Chicago, toward Sophie, toward the unknown. And as the city sank beneath a sea of clouds, I swore with a new cold determination that this would not be the last time Eleanor Harrington heard of me. But next time it would not be from below. Sophie's apartment in the Wicker Park neighborhood smelled of freshly brewed coffee, sandalwood incense, and peace. It was a universe away from the cold marble and heavy perfumes of the Harrington townhouse. Here books were piled on makeshift shelves of bricks and planks. A patchwork quilt covered the worn-out sofa, and the Chicago morning light poured through the large window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It was chaotic, alive, warm, and I, Elena, was a frozen ghost in the middle of it all. The days passed, a monotonous succession of gray dawns and endless nights. I would wake up on the sofa bed in the small living room, where Sophie had insisted I stay. The bedroom is a disaster, Elena, really. For hours I could only stare at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of the city. Eleanor's words played on a loop in my head, a poisonous mantra. Who is going to want you? No one. You are less than nothing. Sometimes I would catch myself whispering it aloud. She is right. That was the most dangerous part. Elena, if you do not move in the next 30 seconds, I am going to throw this mop water on you. I swear. Sophie's voice, firm and non-negotiable, cut through the bathroom door where I had been locked away for I do not know how long. I had only sat on the edge of the tub for a moment, and the weight on my chest had paralyzed me again. No, that is not necessary, I managed to articulate, forcing myself to stand. When I looked in the fogged mirror, I barely recognized the pale woman with eyes darkened by deep circles who stared back. I had been wearing the same old t-shirt of Derek's for 3 days, one he detested, from a rock band he found too noisy. The internal chaos was reflected on the outside. Sophie was in the small kitchen frying eggs. She wore a floral dress, her hair up in a carefree bun. She glanced at me with an expression that wavered between concern and exasperation. Today is the day, she announced, as if speaking of a major event. The day for what? I mumbled, collapsing into a chair. The day you do something more than just breathe and feed your pit of self-pity, honey, she said, sliding a fried egg onto a plate and pushing it in front of me. The aroma suddenly reminded me I was hungry, a primal, shameful hunger. You have eaten. You have slept. Now it is time for the next step. Movement. I cannot, Sophie, I said, but my stomach rumbled, betraying me. I picked up the fork. Yes, you can. You have to. Not for them, for you. Or do you really plan to stay like this, waiting for that vampiric witch of an ex-mother-in-law to be right? Her words were harsh, but her tone was not. It was the tone of someone holding your hair back while you throw up after a brutal hangover. She had been my friend since college, the only one never impressed by the Harringtons. The only one who had told me, with furious tears in her eyes, Elena, that man and that family are going to shred your soul. I had not listened. Now here she was picking up the pieces. And what do you want me to do? I asked with my mouth full. The egg tasted like life. I do not have a job. My savings are what savings I could get out before signing that clause renouncing everything. I do not have a plan. The plan is to live, she said simply, sitting across from me. And to live you need money. And for money you need to work. You are an accountant, Elena. A good one. Before you became Mrs. Harrington, who organized dinner parties. Her gaze softened. Have you even looked at what you brought in that suitcase? No, I had not had the courage. The suitcase was still in a corner of the living room like an awkward corpse from the recent past. After coffee, Sophie, without a word, dragged it to the center of the room and opened it. Come on. Inventory. What is useful we keep. What smells like them we burn. Metaphorically or literally if we have to. I have a grill on the terrace. I began to pull things out with clumsy movements. Simple clothes, my real clothes, a couple of books, an old photo album, and at the bottom a small cardboard box worn at the corners. My heart beat with a dull, familiar thud. It was my mother's box. My mother, the meticulous, hard-working accountant who raised her daughter alone and died too young, just a year before I met Derek. She never got to see the wedding. Sometimes I thought that was a blessing. She would have seen through everything instantly. I opened the box with slightly trembling fingers. It smelled of her, of that soft lavender perfume and old paper. Inside were her costume jewelry, a few photos of me as a child, a bundle of papers tied with a ribbon, and separately a letter. A cream-colored envelope with my name written in her neat, elegant script. For Elena. For when she needs me most. I always thought it was a beautiful poetic phrase. Now I understood its literal meaning. I opened it. My mother's handwriting danced before my eyes. Dearest Elena, my strong girl, if you are reading this, it means things have gone wrong, have they not? Life has that ugly habit. I will not be there to give you a hug, so take these words as one. I do not know what happened, but I know who you are. You are intelligent, you have a huge heart, sometimes too big, and a head for numbers you inherited from me, but which is 10 times better. Never let anyone make you believe otherwise. Not a rich man, not a proud family, not a bad day that lasts for years. The world is big, my daughter. Beyond your neighborhood, beyond even New York. I remember you always liked Chicago when we visited. It has good light and good people if you know where to look. Speaking of looking, for a long time I handled the accounting for a small family business here in Chicago. It was called Montgomery and Associates. They were good, honest people. Old Mr. Montgomery Damien was a man as straight as a beam. His company was not big, but it was solid as a rock. I trusted them and they trusted me. If you ever need a foothold, a place to start over without being looked down upon, look for them. The address and phone number are on the attached paper. Tell them you are calling on behalf of Grace Vargas. Maybe they will remember. Do not be afraid, honey. Falling hurts, but staying on the ground hurts more. Get up, dust yourself off and walk somewhere, anywhere but walk. Love you forever, Mom. Tears fell on the paper, softening the ink. They were not the desperate tears from before. They were different, hot, liberating. Sophie came over and put an arm around me, resting her head on mine, saying nothing. She was a wise woman, your mother, she whispered finally. I nodded, unable to speak. I clutched the letter to my chest. On the small attached paper, written in the same script, was an address in the West Loop District and a phone number. Montgomery and Associates, LLC. Damien Montgomery, manager. Montgomery and Associates, I mused. Do you think they still exist? This must be more than 10 years old. There is only one way to find out, Sophie said with a small but hopeful smile. But first, Operation Get Up and Dust Yourself Off. She gestured at me from head to toe. Shower. Now. Then we will find some clothes that do not smell of defeat. And tomorrow you call. The shower was a baptism. The hot water washed away more than days of grime. It cleared some of the fog from my mind. When I got out wrapped in a towel, I saw my reflection again. My eyes were still tired, but they were not empty anymore. There was something, a minuscule point of light, like an ember left after a fire. My mother's letter had blown on it. The next day, with sweaty palms and my heart about to beat out of my chest, I dialed the number. It rang several times. I was about to hang up, relieved and disappointed at the same time, when a dry, rough, but not unpleasant voice answered on the other end. Hello. Good morning. I am looking for the company Montgomery and Associates. For Damien Montgomery, if possible. There was a brief silence. Who is calling? I took a deep breath. On behalf of Grace Vargas. I am her daughter, Elena. Another longer silence this time. Then the voice changed, softened, lost some of its roughness. Grace, the accountant from New York. Of course I remember. An excellent woman. Her balance sheets were so clean you could eat off them. A pause. How can I help you, kid? Not Miss Vargas. Kid. And in that simple word, in the living memory of my mother in a stranger's voice, something broke inside me. I could not help it. My voice trembled as I explained as concisely as I could, that I was looking for a job, anything in accounting, administration, whatever, that I was in Chicago, that I was starting over. Mr. Montgomery, as he asked me to call him, did not ask many questions. He just listened. At the end he said, the office is not what it used to be. I am getting old, Elena. My sons went down different paths, but the place is still open. And the paperwork, well, the paperwork is always there, waiting for someone with eyes like your mother's to put it in order. If you want to come by, come. Let us talk tomorrow at 10. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was from something that had been absent for months. Anticipation. And? Asked Sophie, who had been unabashedly listening from the couch. I have a meeting tomorrow at 10 to talk. Sophie let out a cry of joy and hugged me tightly. I knew it. A foothold. Your mother is my favorite saint. That night, for the first time since leaving the Harrington townhouse, I dreamed. I did not dream of scornful looks or signatures on paper. I dreamed of mountains of orderly paperwork, of columns of numbers that balanced perfectly. I dreamed of my mother's voice whispering, "Walk, Elena." And the next day, I put on the only suit I had brought that did not make me feel like an imposter, a pair of black trousers and a simple jacket. I pulled my hair back into a firm bun and left Sophie's apartment. I did not know what awaited me in a small office in the West Loop. I did not know if it was a job, an act of pity, or a dead end. But I was walking. And for the first time in a long, long time, it was not backward. The office of Montgomery and Associates was not where my phone's map said it should be. Or rather, it was, but the building before me looked nothing like the mental image I had created. I had imagined a modest but somewhat stately office, perhaps in the Loop, not a converted warehouse on a side street in the West Loop, with an exposed brick facade and a half-lowered metal security gate. Above the door, a defunct blue neon sign read, M. Sorensen, Integrated Solutions. Below it, in smaller faded letters, you could still make out the relief of Montgomery and Association. A knot of disappointment and anxiety tightened in my stomach. It had closed. It had moved. Old Damien Montgomery was perhaps gone. I took a deep breath, remembering the dry but kind voice on the phone. The place is still open. Well, this was a place, and the door, though industrial metal, was ajar. I pushed. A soft creak welcomed me into a large high-ceilinged space, flooded with light from large skylights. It was not a traditional office, it was a loft. To the left, a work area with blueprints spread over drafting tables and computer screens. To the right, a small lounge area with 2 old leather sofas, a low table piled with books, and an Italian coffee maker on a hot plate. And at the far end, among shelves laden with binders, toolboxes, and architectural models, an older man was working at a bench, patiently sanding a piece of wood. He was not Damien Montgomery, or at least he did not match the idea I had formed. This man was tall and thin, with white hair pulled back into a short, messy ponytail. He wore round, plastic-framed glasses, a paint-stained work apron over jeans, and a plaid shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Hearing me enter, he looked up. His eyes, a surprisingly young light blue, studied me with curiosity, not hostility. "Good morning," I said, my voice sounding strangely loud in the open space. "Excuse me, I am looking for Mr. Damien Montgomery. He told me to." "Ah, you must be Elena, Grace's daughter." He set the sandpaper on the bench and approached, wiping his hands on his apron. His smile was broad, crinkling his face in a friendly way. Damien was my partner and my best friend. A shame. The stubborn old goat left us 3 years ago. A heart attack right at this very bench. How he loved it. His tone was not sad, but full of fond resignation. "I am Michael Sorensen. But people call me Mick or just Boss, the ones who dare." He held out a hand. I shook it. His palm was rough, calloused, but the grip was firm and warm. "I am here about the job," I managed to say, feeling a bit disoriented. This was not what I expected. Nothing was. Of course. Come in, have a seat." He gestured toward the sofas in the lounge area. "The coffee is terrible, but it is hot and has caffeine." I nodded, not sure what else to do. While he fiddled with the coffee maker, I took in the place. It was chaotic, but an organized, productive chaos. It smelled of wood, coffee, old paper, and a faint hint of machine oil. Black and white photos of construction projects hung on the walls, a bridge, an apartment building, a public square, along with architectural plans signed with a vigorous hand. "Here you go," he said, placing a thick mug of coffee as black as night in front of me. He sat on the opposite sofa, slumping down with a sigh. "I am glad you came. When you called yesterday, well, you brought back a lot of memories. Your mother was an extraordinary woman. Not just good with numbers, but honest. An honesty that could cut. That is worth a lot, especially these days." He looked me straight in the eye. "Tell me, Elena, why are you really here?" The question asked so simply threw me. He was not asking for my resume or my experience at large firms, non-existent, aside from occasionally helping with the accounts of Derek's company, an unofficial and unpaid job. He was asking about me. And against all odds, I told him. Not everything, not the sordid details, but I told him about New York, about a marriage that had ended, a family that had made me feel small, about needing to start from scratch, about not having much but knowing how to work, that I had learned from my mother, and that I needed a chance. Any chance. My words came out clumsily, sometimes halting, but they were sincere. I did not cry. I had cried enough. Boss Mick listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally or taking a sip of his coffee with a grimace. When I finished, he was silent for a few moments, watching the steam rise from his cup. "Montgomery and Associates does not exist anymore, Elena," he said at last, and my heart sank. I knew it. It had been an illusion. But I do. This, he made a broad gesture encompassing the loft, is my workshop, my refuge, and my company. Integrated Solutions. A pompous name for an old man who cannot sit still. I do a bit of everything. Building renovations, consulting for small projects, models for competitions, and yes, the accounts, which are a monumental mess because I only know how to add and subtract, and sometimes I get that wrong. He smiled, and his eyes glinted with mischief. Your mother used to pull my chestnuts out of the fire every quarter. Since she passed and since Damien left us, things have been a bit up in the air. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I will be frank with you, kid. I do not have a job to offer you. There is no fixed salary, no 9-to-6 schedule, no fancy health insurance. What I have is a mess of invoices, pending bills, back taxes, and an accounting system that is terrifying to look at. What I have are a couple of small projects underway and the prospect of a big one, a very big one, that may or may not come through. What I have is a business that, if not put in order, will collapse like a house of cards. He paused, letting his words sink in. I did not know what to say. He was turning me down in the kindest way possible. But I also have eyes, he continued, his voice softer. And I see Grace Vargas's daughter. I see a woman who has been trampled on and who, despite it all, has had the courage to come here, to a forgotten warehouse in the West Loop, to ask for a chance. Not everyone does that. It speaks of pride and of need. And need, combined with a bit of intelligence and a lot of courage, is the most powerful engine there is. He stood up and went to one of the shelves, pulling out a thick, dusty blue binder. He dropped it on the table with a thud that raised a cloud of dust. Here, he said. These are the accounts for the last year and a half. Or my best attempt at them. It is my baby, my disaster, my shame, and I am offering it to you. I stared at him, completely lost. You are offering it to me? Yes. Sort this out. Make it pretty, or just make it make sense, which would be a miracle. Decipher this hieroglyphic. And while you do it, learn. Stay here in this loft. Watch how I work. Talk to the builders, the surveyors, the clients, the few there are. Learn where the money comes from and, more importantly, where it goes and why. Learn why a screw costs what it costs and why a signature on a contract can sink you or save you. He walked to one of the large drafting tables and pointed to some plans. This, for example, is the big project. The renovation of a historic Gilded Age mansion in the Fulton Market District into a boutique hotel. It is a dream, a headache, and a golden opportunity. If we get it. He turned back to me, his expression now serious, intense. I am not going to pay you a salary at first. I am going to give you a percentage. A small one, very small, of what comes in, if anything comes in. And a roof over your head. He pointed up to a wooden mezzanine at the back of the loft, accessed by a spiral staircase. There is a small studio up there with a tiny bathroom. Damien used it for naps sometimes. It is full of junk, but it has a bed. It is yours if you want it while you work here. I could not believe what I was hearing. It was crazy. Risky, unstable. It was not a job, it was a gamble. An all-or-nothing bet. Why? The question escaped me in a whisper. You do not know me at all, only as my mother's daughter. Boss Mick came and sat down again, looking at me intently. I am about to turn 78, Elena. I have no children. Damien did not either. This company, this mess is all I have built. And I do not want it to be carried away by the wind when I am gone. I want it to be left in good hands, in the hands of someone who will value it, who will build it, not exploit it. He paused. Your mother told me about you, you know? Years ago. She said you had a brilliant mind, but that your heart sometimes clouded your judgment. That you were a good person, maybe too good. And today, seeing you, hearing you, I do not see a defeated woman. I see someone who has hit rock bottom, and is clawing with their fingernails for a wall to push off of and climb. I can be that wall, but you have to make the effort to climb. And the climb will be hard. Very hard. Silence filled the loft. The distant hum of traffic, the ticking of an old wall clock. I looked at the dusty blue binder. I looked at this strange man with calloused hands and wise eyes, who was offering me not a job, but a pact. A wild, desperate, real opportunity. And suddenly Eleanor's words echoed in my mind, but this time they did not paralyze me. They enraged me. Who is going to want you? Who is going to want a divorced woman with no money? This old man I had never met was offering me more than that family had given me in 5 years. Trust. And a challenge. A percentage? I asked, and my voice no longer trembled. Sounded clear, firm. Boss Mick nodded, a slow smile appearing on his lips. 3% of the net profits if there are any. And the studio upstairs. I want 5, I said, not knowing where the audacity came from. And access to all the information to all past and present projects. I want to understand everything, not just the accounts. He raised an eyebrow in surprise, then let out a rough, sincere laugh. By all the saints, Grace's daughter, no doubt. Very well. 5%. But on one condition. Which is? That you do not call me Mr. Sorensen. It makes me feel old. Mick. Or boss if you are feeling shy. And the other condition is that you start right now. This binder, he tapped the blue cover with his finger, is not going to sort itself out. And the taxman is not a patient man. I stood up, walked to the table, and placed my hand on the dusty binder. I felt the rough texture of the cardboard. It was not a divorce decree. It was a map to an unknown, terrifying, and exciting territory. Where is the coffee maker? I asked. I think I am going to need more. Mick pointed to the hot plate, and his smile was the most genuine welcome I had received in years. Over there. And the mugs are in the sink. Welcome aboard, Elena. Welcome to the mess. And so, in a chaotic loft in the West Loop, surrounded by blueprints, wood, and the kind shadow of an old carpenter entrepreneur, I began not a job but a resurrection. The blue binder was my coffin, and I was determined to climb out of it. The dust from the blue binder became my new perfume, a scent of old paper, faded printer ink, and a disorder that promised beneath its chaotic surface a logical order. My first day, my first week was a brutal immersion. Mick had not exaggerated. The accounts of Integrated Solutions were a heroic disaster, a free-for-all of lost invoices, unreferenced delivery slips, and bank statements with cryptic pencil notes in the margins. My world shrank to the large work table by the skylight, surrounded by mountains of paper. During the day I unraveled numbers. At night I climbed to the mezzanine to my new home, a tiny room with a narrow bed, a small lamp, and a window overlooking an inner courtyard. It was Spartan, but it was mine. The first day, after 12 hours staring at columns of expenses, I collapsed onto the bed and cried from sheer mental fatigue. But the next day, waking to the first ray of sun filtering through the window, I did not feel the paralyzing emptiness of my days at Sophie's. I felt a purpose, a tiny dusty purpose, to create order. Mick was a peculiar teacher. He gave no formal lessons. It was learning by osmosis, by observation, and by questions that he answered with more questions. Elena, this receipt for stainless steel for the bar renovation in Wicker Park, do you think it is classified correctly? He would ask, pointing to a piece of paper. I, buried in my numbers, would look up. It seems like a material. It should go under purchase of materials. And why not hospitality expenses? After all, it is for a bar. He would say with a spark of humor in his eyes. Because it is not a consumable, boss. It is an investment in the asset. I would reply, learning to play his game. Exactly. Common sense. The most valuable thing, and the first thing you lose in an office full of MBAs. And he would laugh, returning to his workbench. Little by little, I began to understand the business. It was not a large construction company. It was a glorified workshop, but with a hallmark, artisanal quality, an obsession with detail. Mick was an architect, but above all he was a craftsman. His projects were few, but the ones that came to fruition were works of meticulous care. The renovation of a century-old space for a bakery, the complete overhaul of a penthouse in the Loop, the model for a municipal project that never happened but was a small work of art. And then there was the big project, the mansion in the Fulton Market District, a dream that caused nightmares. The blueprints were always on the main drafting table. It was a 19th century building, abandoned, with structural problems and 1,000 historical restrictions. A developer, a young guy named Tyler with more money than sense, wanted to turn it into a luxury boutique hotel. Mick was the lead architect, and the financing was a house of cards on the verge of collapse. The kid Tyler, Mick explained one afternoon while showing me the utility plans, has his daddy's money and daddy is getting impatient. If we do not get the final building permit from the City Planning Commission in 2 months, and if we do not finalize the construction budget with a profit margin that justifies this madness, daddy pulls the funding, and we are left with a pile of pretty paper and a debt of time and resources. And is it possible? The permit, the budget? I asked, tracing the lines of the electrical system with my finger. Everything is possible. But it will take a miracle, a bribe we will not pay, or an engineer as brilliant as she is stubborn who knows how to negotiate with the city planning officials. He glanced at me. You do not know anything about engineering, do you? I am an accountant, boss. Yeah, shame. But you have got a smart face, and the tax people are more scared of you than they are of me. Maybe the city hall people will be too. His tone was joking, but behind it lay a real concern. This project could either lift the company out of the limbo it was in or sink it. While I wrestled with invoices and Mick wrestled with permits, the outside world, the world of New York, did not stop. Sophie was my link. She called every 2 or 3 days. Still buried in dusty papers, Elena? Is it not claustrophobic? She would say affectionately. It is a different kind of dust. It is my dust, I would answer. And it was true. Every classified invoice, every cross-checked delivery slip, was a small piece of reconquered territory. One Thursday afternoon, her call had a different tone, less cheerful, more cautious. Hey Elena, I do not know if you want to know, but... I put down my pen. I knew she was going to talk about him. About them. It is Derek. There are rumors in my cousin's circle, the lawyer, remember? Sophie lowered her voice as if they could be overheard. They are saying things at Harrington Developments are really bad. Really, really bad. I said nothing. I listened and noticed, with a coldness that surprised me, that my heart was not beating any faster. There was only a professional interest. It seems the big project, that luxury housing development in the Hamptons area, has gotten completely out of hand. Brutal cost overruns, delays, and on top of that, there are complaints from neighbors about damage to the subsoil. It is a monumental mess. The banks are getting very nervous. There is talk that if they do not inject capital within a month, they might have to declare bankruptcy. Bankruptcy. The antechamber to ruin. The words echoed in the silent loft. I glanced over at Mick, who was focused on scribbling a structural calculation on a napkin. He had also been on the brink, was still on a tightrope, but his problem was a lack of size, of influence. Derek's problem had always been excess. Excess pride, excess ambition, excess belief in his own invincibility. And Eleanor? I asked, unable to help myself. Sophie snorted. That one never changes, Elena. From what I hear, she is still organizing her charity dinners and talking about the slow season in the business. But you can see the strain. My friend Laura saw her at an auction last week, bidding on a porcelain vase as if there were no tomorrow. You know, to keep up appearances. Keeping up appearances. I knew that well. The Harringtons were experts at appearances. They appeared happy, solid, perfect, and inside the rot was spreading. Thanks for telling me, Sophie. Are you okay? Her voice was full of concern. I thought for a moment. I was. Yes. And no. I'm not happy about it. I do not feel the sweet revenge I might have expected. I feel confirmation. A sad, cold confirmation. Derek's arrogance, fueled by Eleanor's blindness, came with a price, and they were about to pay it. Meanwhile, here I am in a dusty workshop, fighting to save a dream that is not mine, but that I am learning to make my own. I am learning, Sophie, I said, and it was the purest truth. I am learning that you cannot see a house's foundations, but if they are bad, the house will fall, no matter how many porcelain vases you put in the entryway. I hung up and stared at the columns of numbers on the computer screen, no longer so chaotic. I had established a system, a form of order. It was something tangible, real, something I had built or at least organized. That night, as we ate an omelet Mick had made, burnt on one side, runny on the other, I brought it up, measuring my words. Hey boss, that Fulton Market project, the permits, the budget, could I take a look? Not the technical side, but the numbers, the supplier bids, the cost breakdown. Maybe there is something that can be optimized, from an outsider's perspective, with fresh eyes. Mick looked at me over his glasses, a piece of omelet halfway to his mouth. You have got a hawk's eye for numbers, huh? I have eyes that have seen a business sink because no one looked at the numbers until it was too late, I said with a frankness that surprised me. He chewed slowly, thoughtfully, then nodded. I will send you the files tomorrow. But Elena, his tone turned serious, this is no game. If Tyler finds out a newcomer, an accountant, is digging into his costs, he could get offended. He is a spoiled kid, and his money, even if it is his dad's, is the only thing keeping this project afloat. I am not going to dig. I am going to review to help. He smiled, a tired but hopeful smile. Well, help away. Let us see if between the two of us we can pull off that miracle, because the saints honestly have not been paying me much attention lately. The next day, I dove into the Fulton Market project. These were not simple invoices. It was a monster of hundreds of thousands of dollars, of inflated budget lines, of supplier bids that smelled of kickbacks and cronyism. I saw things that made me frown. I saw duplicated line items. I saw overpriced materials. I saw clearly that someone, perhaps Tyler himself, perhaps one of his advisors, was skimming off the top, bloating the budget at the expense of the project's viability. I said nothing that night. I gathered data. I created a parallel spreadsheet with real market prices, with alternatives. I was not an engineer, but I was an accountant. And a good accountant knows that numbers tell a story. And the story these numbers told was one of waste and possibly bad faith. A week later, while Mick was cursing at an evasive response from the City Planning Commission, I approached his drafting table. I had my laptop. Boss, I found something. Or rather, I found a way to save something. He looked up, his face weary. How much? $120,000, maybe more. Without touching the quality. By changing the supplier for the exterior carpentry, renegotiating the climate control installation, and eliminating 2 line items that are purely ornamental and do not even appear in the original city-approved project. He was silent. He looked at me, then at the screen, then back at me. His expression was one of disbelief. 120,000. Are you sure? The numbers are there, and so are the alternative bids. They are suppliers you have worked with before. They are reliable. He ran a hand over his face. If this is true, Elena, this is not just saving money. This is increasing our margin. This is being able to present a tight but viable budget to Tyler's dad. This could. He stopped, and in his tired eyes, I saw a spark ignite that I had not seen before. Hope. Real hope. This could save our necks. And the project. There is more, I said, lowering my voice. I think the current budget is intentionally inflated. Someone is taking a commission, and it is not a small one. Mick closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was disappointment but not surprise. Tyler or one of his clever boys. I suspected it, but without proof and without an alternative, I could not say anything. He looked at me intently. You have the proof. And the alternative. I nodded. Very well, he said, and his voice regained its strength, the strength of a man who sees a way out. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with the official from urban planning. At 11. I froze. Me? But I am not the architect. I do not. You are the one with the numbers. And numbers are the most powerful argument there is. You go and show Mr. Official our new tight, clean budget. You show him we are serious, that we do not waste, that our project is viable and respectful. That will give him more confidence than my pretty plans. He stood up and placed a hand on my shoulder. It is your project now as much as it is mine. Defend it. The night before the meeting I could not sleep. Not because of nerves about seeing Derek or fear of Eleanor, but because of the fear of failing Mick, failing myself, wasting this strange, improbable opportunity that had been born from the dust of a blue binder. On the other side of the country, in his world of marble and debt, Derek was fighting to save his House of Cards empire. I, in my world of exposed brick and fragile dreams, was preparing to save ours. Not with pride or inheritance, but with a spreadsheet and a heart beating with a force I had forgotten it had. It was not revenge. It was construction. And I, Elena Vargas, had started to lay the foundations. The meeting room at the Chicago Architects Association smelled of stale coffee, polished wood, and a faint aroma of anxiety, a scent I was starting to recognize. It was not the silent opulence of New York offices, but something more terrestrial, more real. Here, discussions were measured in dollars per square foot and execution deadlines, not in last names or intangible influence. I, Elena Vargas, sat in one of the side chairs, a worn leather portfolio on my lap. Across a long wooden table, 3 members of the near North Side District's Urban Planning Commission examined our proposals for the mansion in Fulton Market. Mick, beside me, spoke in his slow but firm voice, pointing out aspects of the renovation plans. I was the support, the numerical artillery. My mission was clear. If they asked about the budget, about the economic viability, I would answer. I was not the architect, I was the accountant. The manager, as Mick had begun to call me in documents, though the title still felt ill-fitting. But in recent months, I had ceased to be the girl from the dusty blue binder. I had learned to read blueprints, to understand tender specifications, to negotiate with suppliers of bricks and hydraulic tiles. And above all, I had learned to gut a budget and rebuild it stronger, tighter, more honest. The Fulton Market project was alive. My cost analysis, the evidence of overbilling, had been a cold shower for Tyler, the young developer. There had been tension, even shouting. But Mick, with glacial calm, had presented him with the alternative numbers. With this, your father signs. With the other, he kicks you to the curb and sinks us both. In the end, logic and the fear of disinheritance prevailed. The new clean budget was the key that slowly unlocked the door to the city commission permits. Mr. Sorensen, said the commission chairwoman, a woman with a severe expression and thin-framed glasses, the structural solution for the main facade is ingenious and respects the regulations. What concerns us is the timeline. 12 months for Phase 1 seems optimistic. Mick was about to respond, but he shot me a quick glance. A glance that said now. I cleared my throat. All eyes turned to me. I felt a rapid pulse, but not of panic. It was the concentrated adrenaline of knowing I had firm ground beneath my feet. The numbers. Madam Chairwoman, the timeline is not optimistic. It is realistic, and it is supported by the detailed work schedule we have attached. Page 42. I opened my portfolio and pulled out a copy, though I knew they had their own. The key lies in the prefabrication of some structural elements and the batch management of materials, which reduces waiting times and inactive labor by 15%. We have secured agreements with local suppliers who guarantee a constant supply. The time saved, as you can see in column H, is reinvested in the quality of the finishes, thus respecting the building's historical commitment. I spoke clearly without hesitation. The numbers were my shield and my sword. These were not the abstract, doctored numbers of Harrington developments. They were concrete, negotiated, justified figures. For the next 15 minutes, the commission bombarded me with questions about guarantees, insurance, projected cash flow. I responded, relying on my spreadsheets, preliminary contracts, and supplier emails. Mick would nod, interjecting a technical comment when necessary, but he left the financial field to me. It was my trial by fire. And seeing the commission members' faces shift from suspicion to consideration and then to cautious respect, I knew I was passing it. Leaving the building, the afternoon light bathed the street. Mick exhaled a long sigh, a mix of fatigue and satisfaction. For the love of God, Elena, you were formidable. That column H bit was masterful. You left them with no arguments. I just told the truth, boss. The truth of the numbers, I replied, a wide, genuine smile spreading across my face. It was the smile of a job well done, of an obstacle overcome, a feeling I had forgotten existed. Well, your truth has earned us another meeting, but it is the last one. The next one is definitive. If we provide the deposit and sign the commitment to start within a month, the permit is ours. We looked at each other. We had done it. We were one step away. The Fulton Market project, our crazy dream, was breathing strongly. Let us celebrate with a coffee that does not taste like printer ink, he proposed, pointing to a nearby cafe terrace. As we walked, my phone vibrated. It was Sophie. The Thursday call. I answered it. Sophie, I cannot talk right now. I will call you later. Elena, listen for a second. Her voice did not have its usual gossipy tone. It sounded tense, urgent. It is Derek. He is here in Chicago. For an instant the world stopped. The afternoon air grew thick. What? I saw him. Or rather, he saw me. He was coming out of a restaurant on Michigan Avenue with some guys in suits who looked shady. He was dressed in gray, literally and figuratively. He looked at me, Elena, and I saw panic, pure panic in his eyes. Then he looked away and jumped into a taxi like the devil was chasing him. Derek in Chicago was no coincidence. Chicago was my city now, my refuge, my workshop. His presence here was an invasion, a reminder that the past was not dead, just looking for new places to haunt. What is it, Elena? Who are you talking to? Mick asked, noticing my change in expression. I motioned for him to wait. Are you sure, Sophie? Completely. He was thinner with dark circles. He was not the Prince Charming of the Harringtons, I assure you. He looked like a cornered man. A cornered man. The image gave me a strange feeling, a cocktail of unease and a cold, distant pity. Thanks for letting me know, Sophie. Be careful, okay? That guy is not well. He looks desperate, and desperation makes people do stupid things. I hung up. Mick was watching me, his eyebrow arched in a silent question. Trouble, I summarized dryly. The kind that needs a strong coffee or the kind that needs a lawyer? He asked, practical as ever. For now, coffee. We sat down. I briefly told him who Derek was and about his company being on the brink of collapse. Mick whistled softly. A Harrington. I know the name. Big projects, big egos, and now big holes. He took a sip. And what is he doing here in my city? I do not know, but it is not for a cultural tour. Do you think he is looking for you? I thought about it. Would he look for me? For what? To ask for help? Impossible. His pride would not allow it. To blame me? Even less likely. No, he was not looking for me. Chicago was a financial and business hub. He was probably looking for investors. A last-minute lifeline. The idea settled in my mind with the coldness of a fact. 2 days later, the theory became a certainty. I was in the loft finalizing the documentation for the city commission deposit when the street buzzer rang. I was not expecting anyone. Mick was meeting with a marble supplier. I peered through the peephole and there he was. Derek. He looked 10 years older. His suit, impeccable as always, hung on him slightly. His face, once so self-assured, was gaunt, with a shadow of a several-day-old beard that failed to look casual, only neglected. His eyes, which used to shine with arrogance, were now dull, ringed with deep circles. He clutched a leather briefcase with both hands, as if clinging to a life raft. A jolt of something, hate, fear, pity shot through me. I took a deep breath, remembering Eleanor's look, her poisoned words, remembering my own trembling signature in that office. I opened the door. Surprise was the first thing in his eyes, then a flurry of emotions. Relief, shame, and beneath it all, that wounded arrogance that never quite disappeared. Elena, he said, his voice raspy, as if he had not spoken in days. Derek. I leaned against the doorframe, not letting him in. What a surprise. He attempted a smile, a pale reflection of his former charming grin. Are you not going to invite me in? This is a peculiar place. His gaze scanned the loft over my shoulder, lingering on the blueprints, the models, the creative chaos. He could not hide a quick, instant flash of contempt, the contempt of someone used to 20th floor offices for a craftsman's workshop. It is my office, I said with a coldness that satisfied me. And I am working. So tell me what you want and be brief. His smile vanished. He pressed his lips together. Very direct. I suppose Chicago has changed you. He paused, searching for words. I need to talk to you. It is important. A business matter. We have no pending business, Derek. We signed it all away, remember? Each word was a small hammer blow on the nail of our history. Not that kind, he replied with a hint of impatience. This is about an opportunity for you. Listen, I know you are working with this Sorensen fellow, some neighborhood renovator. I have heard about a project in Fulton Market, a historic mansion. My heart skipped a beat. How did he know? Was he so desperate that he was sniffing around small projects in my new life? And I hear you need financing. Tyler Voss is an unstable kid. His father could cut him off at any moment. We Harrington Developments, we could come in as a capital partner. Inject liquidity, give you credibility. It is a unique opportunity for a workshop, for a company like yours. The words came out of his mouth, but they sounded false, forced. He reeked of desperation from a mile away. He did not want to be a partner. He wanted a lifeboat. He wanted to use the Fulton Market project, our project, to prop up his sinking company, to launder his image or his money or both. I stared into the eyes I had once loved, now seeing them only as those of a dangerous stranger. You are in no position to give credibility to anyone, Derek. I know. All of New York knows. Your company is sinking, and you are not going to use my work, Mick's work, to try to keep it afloat for one more day. His face went pale. The mask of confidence shattered completely, revealing raw panic and rage. Who do you think you are to talk to me like that? A failure hiding in a garage? This is business. I am offering you a way out, Elena, the only one you are going to get. My way out, I said slowly and clearly, is one I am building myself, brick by brick, number by number. Without you and without your money, which from the looks of it, will soon belong to no one. I took a step back, grabbing the door. Do not come looking for me again, Derek. You have nothing to offer me, and I have absolutely nothing to give you. His expression twisted into something ugly, contorted. For an instant I saw the spoiled child he had always been, frustrated that the world would not bend to his will. You will regret this, he spat. When this piece of junk workshop goes bankrupt and you are back on the street, you will remember that I offered you a hand. You did not offer me a hand, Derek. You tried to use me as a stepping stone. As always. I took a deep breath. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do. Real work. I closed the door. Not with a slam but with a dry, firm click. I leaned against the wood, trembling. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline rush, the contained rage, the certainty of having done the right thing. On the other side, I heard his footsteps retreating, fast and furious. Then silence. Mick appeared from the back room, his expression serious. That was him, was it not? I nodded, still unable to speak. He looked like he had either seen a ghost or was one, he commented, coming closer. Everything okay? Yes, I said. And as I said it, I knew it was true. Everything is fine. It was just the echo of my past begging for scraps. And it left empty-handed. Mick placed a hand on my shoulder, a firm, comforting gesture. Echoes fade, Elena. What we build here, the numbers, the plans, the foundations, that is real. That remains. Then a mischievous smile appeared on his lips. And now let us get that deposit ready. We have a mansion to renovate and an ex-husband to leave in our dust. A wide, liberating smile spread across my face. The fear was gone. In its place was a steely determination. Derek had come to my territory seeking salvation, and had found a different woman. A woman who no longer signed papers with trembling hands, but who closed doors with resolve. A woman who had a future to build and a past to which she owed nothing. The peace in the loft after Derek's visit was different. It was not the calm from before, but the tense quiet that follows an explosion. The air seemed to vibrate with the energy of the confrontation. I did not regret a single word, but the rawness of the encounter, seeing him so diminished, so desperate, left a bitter aftertaste. It was not pity. It was the metallic taste of the harshest reality. When pride falls, it makes a dull, ugly sound. Mick watched me more closely in the following days but said nothing. His respect was shown in silence, in giving me space. I threw myself into my work with renewed ferocity. The Fulton Market project was no longer just an opportunity. It was a bastion. Our bastion. Every balance figure, every permit obtained, was another brick in a wall separating my new world from the shipwreck of my old life. A week later, the storm broke in the headlines. Sophie sent me the link in the morning with a simple message. It is official. Harrington Developments files for bankruptcy. The iconic family company is saddled with over $80 million in debt. Banks refuse another bailout. The news dominated the business section of every digital newspaper. There were photos of the corporate headquarters, a glass and steel building in Manhattan's business district. The same photo Derek used on his business cards. I read the article with analytical coldness. It detailed the mistakes, the reckless investment in the Hamptons project, the cost overruns, the lawsuits, the loss of investor confidence. It named Derek Harrington as CEO, heir to the family business, and pointed to his reckless management. There was no mention of Eleanor. She always made sure to appear on the society pages, not these. Mick arrived at the loft with a physical newspaper under his arm. He placed it on the table next to my coffee. I assume you have seen. I nodded. Yes. 80 million. He whistled, taking off his jacket. That is a hell of a hole. There is no coming back from that. This is the end. They will liquidate assets to pay creditors pennies on the dollar. He looked at me. How do you feel? I took a moment to answer. How did I feel? There was no euphoria. No sweet revenge I might have imagined in my darkest moments. There was justice, a cold, mathematical, implacable justice. He had built his own tomb, brick by brick, with arrogance and mismanagement. I feel like the universe has a strange sense of accounting, I said finally. The numbers always add up in the end. Always. Yes, he said with a hint of bitterness. But they screw over a lot of people along the way. The workers, the small suppliers, people like us, but who did not get lucky or have a crazy old man give them a chance. His perspective reminded me that behind the figures were lives. But I also remembered the workers Derek had fired without a second thought in his first restructuring, the suppliers he stopped paying to finance his lifestyle. Justice was a complex monster. The loft's landline phone rang, an old cream-colored device that only the oldest suppliers used. Picked it up. Integrated Solutions, good morning. A silence. Then a voice I thought I had erased from my memory, but instantly recognized in every syllable, laden with its false sweetness and inherent disdain. It was rougher than I remembered, cracked with tension. Elena. It is Eleanor. The world contracted. I gripped the receiver so tightly my knuckles turned white. Mick, seeing my expression, went on alert. Eleanor, I said, my voice flat, dead. What a surprise. I unconsciously used the same words I had used to greet her son. I do not have time for games, Elena, she snapped, her facade crumbling immediately. The pressure must have been unbearable. I need to talk to you. It is urgent. A business matter. A business matter. The same words Derek had used. The Harrington family, on the brink of ruin, still thought they could give orders. I already discussed business with Derek. I have nothing to add. This is different. Her voice cracked, almost a shout. She regained control. Listen to me. Just listen. The company, the situation is complicated, but there are assets. Valuable assets. Almost new machinery. A couple of well-located plots of land. It is all going to be auctioned off for scraps. It would be a shame. She paused, and when she spoke again, her tone was that of someone offering a favor. I thought of you. Your new company, you could make an offer. An advantageous offer. We would sell it to you before the auction at a friendly price. It would be a good start for you, and for us a more dignified solution. I could not believe what I was hearing. It was not an offer. It was an insult, a poisoned handout. She wanted us to buy the scraps of her shipwreck at a bargain price to save their dignity, so they could say they did not lose everything, that they transferred it to acquaintances. And in the process perhaps launder their reputation a little. The audacity was monumental. Let me see if I understand, Eleanor, I said, and I felt my tone turn icy, as sharp as glass. Your company is bankrupt. You owe $80 million and you want me, with the neighborhood company I work for, to buy some of your broken toys so you can feel better? Is that it? On the other end of the line, there was a gasp of contained fury. Do not be insolent. I am offering you a hand. I am offering you an opportunity you do not deserve. The opportunity to be your personal garbage collector? I exploded, unable to hold back any longer. All the rage, all the humiliation from that office, from those years, boiled in my voice. Is that why you are calling me? So I can clean up the mess of your incompetence? To help you save face, just like you always did, like you did with me. You are no one to judge us. We were a respectable family until you got your claws into it. Her attack, so predictable, immediately restored my calm. A frozen, dangerous calm. I remember now, Eleanor. Your exact words. You will never find anyone better than my son. Who is going to want you now? Do you remember them? My voice was a thread of poisoned silk. Well, here I am, in my office with my job, and your son, the unbeatable one, has just run his company into the ground. Who wants whom now, Eleanor? The silence on the other end was absolute. I could almost hear her heart racing with rage and impotence. When she spoke, it was a hoarse whisper, thick with hatred. You are an ungrateful viper. You always were. Derek took pity on you, and this is how you repay him. He did not repay me with anything, Eleanor. I signed for my freedom, and it was the best deal of my life. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of absolute clarity. So no, we will not be buying your scrap metal. We will not be your cover-up. You have sunk on your own. Now drown with that dignity you always preached about. I was about to hang up, but her voice, suddenly a harsh plea, stopped me. Wait. The Fulton Market project. I know about it. Derek told me. You need the final permit. The city commission, I have connections. A distant cousin in urban planning, he could speed things up, secure it, in exchange for a consideration. A bribe. She was offering a bribe. Using the last threads of her rotten influence to bend the law in her favor, as they had always done. Nausea rose in my throat. Keep your connections, Eleanor, I said with a contempt I hoped would burn her. We do not play that game. We have plans, we have numbers, and we have a project that is better than yours ever was. And we are going to get it cleanly. Something you would never understand. I hung up. The click echoed in the silent loft. I was trembling not from fear, but from the release of years of pent-up tension. I had faced her and I had won. Mick was staring at me, his eyes wide. The mother, he said, not as a question but as a statement. The mother, I confirmed, sinking into a chair. Offering me the poisoned crumbs from her banquet. And a bribe. He arched an eyebrow. A bribe for the Fulton Market permit? Yes. And you told her no? Yes. He came over and placed his calloused hands on my shoulders, which were still trembling slightly. Then today we did not just win. We won well. His simple, resounding approval was worth more than any praise. But the call, instead of closing the chapter, opened a door in my mind, a dangerous door, filled with a dark magnetic light. Eleanor had mentioned the Fulton Market project not just to offer a bribe, but as a pressure point. And suddenly all the pieces clicked into place in my head with an almost audible snap. Boss, I said, looking at him intently. The final permit, the last meeting. When is it? In 10 days. Next Tuesday. Final presentation before the municipal board. It is the last hurdle. 10 days. I stood up and went to the drafting table where the Fulton Market plans lay. I looked at them, but I no longer saw lines and dimensions. I saw a chessboard. That plot next to the mansion, the one that is a parking lot now, that the city wants to sell to finance part of the plaza's renovation. Who wants it? Mick frowned, surprised by the change of topic. Tyler, our developer, wants it to expand the hotel's spa area. But it is very expensive, and the city will put it up for public auction if a direct deal is not reached with the mansion's developer, which would be us if we get the permit. And what if Harrington Developments, in its liquidation process, had some right or option on that plot among its assets? Or on a nearby plot that could affect the project? I left the sentence hanging in the air. He looked at me and slowly understanding began to dawn in his eyes. They would be in a position to screw everything up, to throw a wrench in the works, to sell that right to the highest bidder, who could be a competitor wanting to sink our hotel. He stroked his chin. But they do not have it. I checked. It is not listed anywhere. They do not have it now, I said, and my voice sounded strange, strategic, cold. But what if they did? Or rather, what if the city commission believed they might have a litigious right, a claim, something that would cloud the project's clean title? A shadow of a doubt. At the last minute, Mick stood frozen. Are you thinking of bidding yourself? In the auction of Harrington's assets? Not to buy machinery. To buy a threat. Not a threat. A position, I corrected. If Harrington is liquidating, its assets will be auctioned to the highest bidder. If we acquire, I do not know, a small package of bad loans on land in the area, or even submit a bid for that adjacent plot through a proxy, not to build on it but to hold it. We would be the ones controlling that risk. We would take away the ability of any competitor, or the Harrington family themselves, to use it against us. We would consolidate our position. It would be a defensive and offensive move. The silence stretched. It was a risky, almost reckless idea. It meant diverting capital attention and playing on a much larger, dirtier board. But it was also smart. It was securing our flank. It was shifting from being potential victims of their disaster to being agents who controlled the rubble. "It is a poker game, Elena," Mick said at last. "And we do not have a very big stack of chips. We have the Fulton Market project. And if we get the permit, its value will skyrocket. We can use that future capital gain as collateral to get a loan for this operation. A small loan, but enough to bid in a bankruptcy auction where prices are a joke." The words flowed from my mouth with a terrifying fluency. I had been studying the market, bankruptcy laws, finance. I had devoured it all, and now my mind was connecting the dots naturally, almost inevitably. He studied me for a long minute. He was not seeing the wounded woman who had arrived months ago. He was seeing a strategist, a hungry woman with a cool head. "It is dangerous. We could lose focus and money. If we do not do it and some vulture buys those assets to harm us, we could lose everything." Eleanor's call was not a business call. It was a warning. A warning that even as they sink, they will try to drag us down with them if they can, or they will sell to someone who can. I moved closer to him. "I do not want revenge, boss. I want security. I want to guarantee our future. And sometimes the best defense is to buy the knife they want to stab you with." Mick let out a short, rough laugh. "By all the saints, Elena. Your mother would be so proud. And terrified." He stood up and went to the window, looking out at the street. "The permit is in 10 days. The auction for Harrington's assets must be soon too. Next week." I saw it. There is a lot of miscellaneous rights and credits on land in Chicago. It is cheap because it is an opaque package full of junk. But buried in that junk there could be something useful. Or at least we can make it look like there is. He turned back to me. In his blue eyes the fire of battle, a fire I thought had been extinguished, was glowing. "Are you asking me to go to war? They already declared it, boss. Years ago. I am just choosing the battlefield. And I want it to be ours." There was another silence charged with electricity. Then he gave a single firm nod. "Very well. Prepare the numbers. All the information on the auction and a plan. A very, very detailed plan. And tomorrow we present it to Tyler. Because if we are going to do this, we need him to be on board, or at least not to get scared and run." "He will not get scared," I said, a new fierce confidence growing inside me. "Because we are going to show him that we are not just a neighborhood workshop. We are partners who know how to play. And we are going to win." That day in the West Loop loft I stopped being the apprentice. I stopped being the victim who reacts. I took control. Eleanor's call, in her clumsy attempt at manipulation, had given me the final piece of the puzzle. I was not going to wait for their disaster to splash onto me. I was going to walk into it with a map and a goal and take what I needed to protect what was mine or what was about to be. The game had changed. And I, Elena Vargas, was ready to play. The air in the courthouse auction room smelled of dust, old wood, and contained despair. A smell I knew well, though here it was denser, more institutional. I was not in the warm chaos of the loft, but in a cold space with dark wooden benches and a dais where a bored-looking official monotoned lots of seized assets. Mick and I sat on a bench in the back. He, in his tweed jacket, looked like a distracted professor. I, in a simple black pantsuit with my hair in a severe bun, tried to blend into the shadows. We were not the only ones. There were a few men who looked like bankruptcy sharks, their scrutinizing eyes calculating the value of scrap and opportunity. And in a corner, pale and worn, I saw Derek. He did not look at me. His gaze was fixed on the floor, as if he wanted to disappear. Seeing him there, in the trench of his own disaster, sent a shiver down my spine. It was not joy. It was the solemn confirmation of a sentence carried out. "Lot 47, the official announced. Package of rights, credits, and minor holdings on various plots and properties, primarily in the county of Cook. Assessed value $45,000. Minimum bid $5,000. This was our target. A bundle of almost worthless papers, a bag of legal doubts. But buried within it, according to the meticulous research we had commissioned from a specialized lawyer, spending a precious part of our precarious loan, was an expired but litigious purchase option on a small plot adjacent to the Fulton Market block. It was not the key adjacent plot, but it was close enough that, with an aggressive argument, it could obstruct any project by claiming easements or access issues. It was, in essence, a grain of sand, but sometimes a grain of sand is enough to jam a gear. A shark, a guy with a goatee and a leather jacket, raised his hand. 5. Mick looked at me. I gave an almost imperceptible nod. 10, he said, his voice clear. Derek's head snapped up. His bloodshot eyes met ours. Surprise mingled with a hatred so intense, I could almost feel it across the room. He understood instantly. We were not there by chance. The goateed shark frowned, sizing us up. 15. 20, I countered directly, not letting Mick speak. My voice did not waver. The shark studied us a moment longer. We were an enigma. Two unknowns bidding on a lot of legal junk. Maybe he thought we knew something he did not. 30. 35, I said without blinking. It was our limit. The loan that Tyler, after a tense meeting where we showed him the risk and the strategy, had agreed to back, could not stretch any further. The shark hesitated, looked at his papers, then at us, at our unremarkable appearance. Finally he shrugged. It was not worth it. 35 to the lady, the official said, giving a soft rap with his gavel. Lot sold to Vargas and Associates. We had used the company name, our now official name from the previous week. Vargas and Sorensen Integrated Solutions. My name came first. For the first time it was not Harrington, it was Vargas. Derek stood up and walked quickly out of the room, not looking back. He had just witnessed us buying a piece of his empire's wreckage for scraps, not to profit from it, but to protect ourselves from him. The message was clearer than any words. Leaving with the adjudication envelope in my hand, Mick exhaled. $35,000 for a bundle of problems. I hope you know what you are doing, Elena. We did not buy problems, boss, I said, feeling the weight of the envelope, a light weight for what it represented. We bought insurance. And we sent a message. The message, filtered through the network of rumors that always surrounds bankruptcies, reached its intended recipient. 2 days later, on the eve of the final meeting with the City Commission, I received an email in my professional account, the one at info@vargas-sorensen.com. The sender's address was a string of numbers and letters, but the style was unmistakable. Playing with fire will get you burned. Leave what is not yours alone. You and that old man are no match. Withdraw from the Fulton Market project and forget what you bought. You can leave with something or with nothing. The choice is yours. D. I did not show the email to Mick. I did not want to worry him further. Instead I saved it. It was more proof, a testament to his panic and his miscalculation. Because I was no longer the Elena who got scared by veiled threats. I was the Elena who had a project to defend and a new, albeit small, weapon in her arsenal. The morning of the City Hall meeting dawned with a deep, clear blue sky. I wore the same pantsuit, but with a crisp white shirt. Mick wore a tie, something I had not seen on him in months. We went with Tyler, the developer, who was as nervous as a child on his first communion day. We carried 2 briefcases, one with the final, signed and sealed plans, the other mine with the financial study, the executive budget, and a copy of the deed of adjudication for Lot 47. The council chamber was imposing, a long U-shaped table with 10 commission members and municipal technicians. In the center sat the commission chairwoman, the same severe-faced woman. The atmosphere was one of icy formality. Mick's presentation was masterful. He spoke of the building's history, the integration of modern and old, the revitalization of the neighborhood. He showed renderings, details of the materials. It was artistry. Then it was Tyler's turn, who mumbled a bit about tourism projections and employment. And then it was my turn. I stood up. 10 pairs of eyes fixed on me. I took a breath, focusing on the chairwoman. Madam Chairwoman, members of the commission, I am here to talk about what underpins this dream, the numbers. I opened my briefcase. Here you have the detailed construction budget, itemized with 3 bids for each item. Here is the 5-year economic viability study with different scenarios. Here is the bank's financing commitment, conditional only on obtaining this license. I passed the documents one by one to an aide who distributed them. We have eliminated any speculative items. Every dollar is justified. And we have also found a way to increase the project's contribution to public space. That is when I pulled out the plan for the adjacent plot, the one everyone wanted. This is municipal land. Our proposal is not to buy it to expand the hotel. A slight murmur went through the room. Tyler shot me a panicked look. I continued unperturbed. Our proposal is to sign a 50-year surface rights lease, paying an annual fee, and to use this space for a public garden, accessible from the street, maintained by the hotel, but for public use and enjoyment. It improves integration, gives a green lung to the neighborhood, and more than fulfills the public benefit requirement. It was an idea that had occurred to me days earlier while studying the regulations. It did not cost much more than the fee and was a huge image booster. I saw the expressions of several commission members change. They exchanged glances. The chairwoman took a note. "That is an interesting proposal, Ms. Vargas," she said. "But there is one last point. We have received an anonymous communication alleging that there are third-party rights on adjoining lands that could affect the property and access." She fixed her eyes on me. "Can you clarify this matter?" There it was. Derek's move or Eleanor's or both. Mick tensed beside me. Tyler turned pale. I opened my briefcase one last time and pulled out the copy of the deed of adjudication for Lot 47. Indeed, there are complex rights on some plots in the area, resulting from recent bankruptcy proceedings. I saw the room tense up. That is why, to guarantee the absolute legal clarity and security of this project, our company, Vargas and Sorensen, has acquired in a public auction each and every one of those doubtful rights, credits, and holdings that affected the block. I placed the document on the table. So, at this moment, the only rights that exist on those lands, whatever they may be, belong to us. And we cede them, here and now, free of charge and tied to this project, to the City Commission for their extinguishment or for whatever use they deem appropriate, as long as it is compatible with the rehabilitation of the mansion in Fulton Market. The silence was absolute. Then, a murmur of astonishment rippled across the table. I had gone from being a potential victim of a legal problem to being the owner of the problem and offering the solution, wrapped in a bow on the table. It was a move of ruthless elegance. It not only neutralized the threat, but also demonstrated a foresight and strategic solvency that exposed the pettiness of the anonymous complaint. The chairwoman looked at me for a long time, and for the first time, she offered something resembling a smile. "That is commendable proactive management, Ms. Vargas. It removes any shadow of a doubt." The vote was quick. In favor unanimously. The final building permit for the renovation of the Fulton Market Mansion into a boutique hotel was granted. As we stepped out into the sunlit atrium, Tyler was euphoric, wanting to hug us. Mick squeezed my arm tightly, speechless, his eyes moist. I just felt a huge emptiness, followed by a wave of deep, powerful peace. We had done it. Against all odds, against the Harringtons, against distrust, against ourselves. In the taxi back to the loft, Mick broke the silence. "The public garden thing was a stroke of genius. How long had you been planning that?" "Since I read the Urban Integration Ordinance last week," I confessed. It was the missing piece. Not just to win, but to win well. And the rights, offering them like that, Elena, that was brilliant. And terrifying. His tone was one of pure admiration. "It was not revenge, boss. It was house cleaning. We sweep our own house, and theirs if necessary, so they do not throw their dust on us." That night, while the digital headlines in Chicago read, "City Commission greenlights ambitious Hotel Fulton Market project," and those in New York continued with the Harrington bankruptcy saga, I was alone in the loft. Mick had gone out to celebrate with some old friends. I poured myself a glass of red wine, the first in months, and looked out the mezzanine window. Below, in the dim light, the Fulton Market plans on the large table seemed to vibrate with a new energy. They were no longer a dream. They were a reality in motion. My phone buzzed with a message from Sophie. "Saw it on the local news. You are a goddess. And that poker face in the photo. Ha ha. Love you, champ. I smiled. Then, almost without thinking, I opened the threatening email from Derek. I did not delete it. I hit reply. I wrote without a greeting, without a signature, just 2 lines. The Fulton Market permit was granted unanimously. The rights you mentioned belong to us. They are no longer a problem. They are a garden. And I sent it. It was not to gloat. It was to close the circle. So he would know that his move had not only failed but had been used against him. So he would understand that the board had changed. So that in his darkest night, he would know that I, Elena Vargas, the one nobody would want, had not only been wanted by a crazy old man, by a loyal friend, by a project, but that I had won. I walked down the spiral staircase, approached the drafting table, and placed my hand on the plans. The paper was cool, but the promise it held was warm, alive. It was my crown. It was not made of gold, and it was not light. It was made of responsibility, of debts to honor, of a team to lead, of a dream to make real. It was heavy. God, it was heavy. But it was my weight to carry, and I would carry it with my head held high. The game was not over. I had just entered a new league. But for the first time I was not afraid to play. Because now I was writing the rules too. 6 months. 6 months since the divorce was signed. 180 days since I walked out of that library with a suitcase and a shattered soul. Time, I found, does not heal all wounds. Some it cauterizes, sealing them with the red-hot iron of determination and work, leaving a scar that is hard, numb to the touch but strong. The Fulton Market project was now a roaring reality. Cranes crowned the mansion's profile, scaffolding was its new skin, and the sound of jackhammers was a symphony of progress. Vargas and Sorensen was no longer a secret in Chicago's renovation circles. We were the go-to for complicated projects with soul and impeccable accounts. The play with the public garden and the absorption of the conflicting rights had earned us a reputation for intelligence, audacity, and above all, integrity, something worth more than gold in the construction world. Boss Mick, or just Mick as I now almost always called him, had kept his word. As soon as we secured the permit and the final financing, he summoned me to his drafting table, which he now shared with mine. On it he placed a brown envelope. "There are 2 things in here," he said, his blue eyes shining with contained emotion. "The first is the incorporation deed for the new company, Vargas Group LLC. You own 51%. I will keep 49% and my position as Director of Architecture and Design, if you will have me." Before I could protest, he held up a hand. "It is not a gift. It is an investment in the future. In my future. I want to spend my last years drawing, not dealing with banks. You are in charge. It is only fair." "And the second thing?" I asked, a lump in my throat. "The second is a key." He smiled. "It is to a car. A stupidly large, expensive, and flashy car parked outside. An indulgence from an old man who always wanted one and who now, seeing his heir run the show, feels he has the right to treat himself. And to treat her. So that when she has to go to New York to close that other matter, she arrives making the right kind of noise. That other matter was the plot adjacent to Fulton Market, the one for our public garden. Negotiations with the Chicago City Commission had been smooth but required my presence for the final signing of the surface rights agreements. And there was one final procedure in New York, at a notary's office, to formalize the purchase of a specific asset from the bankruptcy estate of Harrington Developments, their corporate headquarters. The Glass and Steel Building. We had not planned it initially, but when it came up for auction at a ridiculously low price, no one wanted an office building branded with such a high-profile failure. Our new bank, delighted with our cash flow from the Fulton Market project, offered us financing. It was a cold, strategic decision. The building was well located, and we could sell or lease it for a profit. But also I could not deny it had the sweet taste of poetic justice, a poem I was willing to write in the form of a purchase agreement. Which is why exactly 6 months later, I was driving a silver Rolls-Royce Cullinan through the streets of Manhattan. It was not my style, it was too ostentatious. But Mick was right, it made the right kind of noise. A noise of victory, of power, of a change in dynasty. Jordan, a young and efficient lawyer from our company, accompanied me, silent and discreet. "The signing with the notary is at 12 Ms. Vargas, he reminded me, consulting his tablet. We have an hour. One stop first, I said, diverting our course toward the business district where the Harrington building stood, like a monument to past hubris. As we approached, I saw the scene. A small moving truck, the kind you rent by the hour, was parked in the loading zone. Two men in overalls were carrying out cardboard boxes and cheap office furniture, loading them listlessly. And standing in front of the main glass doors, like a statue of misfortune, was Eleanor. Time had not been kind to her. She seemed to have shrunk. Her impeccable suit hung from shoulders that now curved forward. She wore enormous sunglasses, but they could not hide the tightness of her jaw, the tremor in her hands as she clutched a leather handbag like a shield. And beside her, Derek, dressed in jeans and a wrinkled shirt, stared at the ground, his shoulders slumped. It was the living image of defeat. They had gone from being the owners of the building to being its evictees, collecting the scraps of an empire that no longer existed. I parked the Rolls right in front, in a vacant handicap spot. The engine died with a luxurious whisper. The resulting silence was absolute. The movers paused to stare at the car with vulgar admiration. Derek looked up. Eleanor turned slowly, with the automatic disdain of someone expecting to be bothered by a commoner. And then she saw me through the windshield. Our eyes met. Mine hidden behind the sunglasses I also wore. Hers, from which her own finally fell, revealing a look of absolute disbelief, followed by a recognition that was like a physical blow. Her mouth, always so firm, fell slightly open. Derek took a step back as if he had been struck. His mask of indifference shattered, revealing stupefaction, rage, and a shame so deep it was almost tangible. I opened the door and got out. I wore an impeccably tailored pantsuit in a pearl gray color, low but expensive heels, and my hair was down, waving slightly in the breeze. I was not the disheveled woman who had left their house. I was the owner of something. Elena, Derek stammered. It was the only word he could manage. Eleanor recovered her composure more quickly. Her pride was stronger than her shock. She straightened her back and lifted her chin, regaining her air of an outraged grand dame. What are you doing here? She spat, her voice, though rough, attempting to reclaim its tone of superiority. Have you come to watch the show? To enjoy our misfortune? I am not surprised. Ruin and baseness always attract each other. I walked slowly toward them, letting the sun glint off the car's flawless paint behind me. I took off my sunglasses. I wanted them to see my eyes, to see that there was no hatred, no joy. There was only an absolute, impenetrable calm. No, Eleanor, I said, my voice clear and serene, resonating on the silent sidewalk. I am not here to enjoy myself. I am here to work. I gestured toward the building. There are some papers to sign. Eleanor twisted her mouth into a sneer. Papers? Now you pretend to do business with us? Offer us a pittance for the furniture? Save your charity. We do not need it. The Harringtons always recover. Derek, however, was staring at me intently, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Something in my posture, in the tranquility of my gaze, told him this was bigger, more definitive. This is not about charity, Eleanor, I continued. And it is not about furniture. I took another step, until I was just a few feet from them. I could see the fine cracks in her makeup, the desperation in his eyes. It is about property. A shadow of doubt crossed Eleanor's face. What are you talking about? Jordan, my lawyer, stepped forward then, his leather folder under his arm. His professional, anonymous presence added another layer of ominous reality to the scene. I am talking about the fact that the liquidation of Harrington Developments has been long and complex, I said, as if explaining a financial report. Many assets have been auctioned. Some, the most valuable, have gone to investors. Others have found more strategic buyers. Derek grew even paler. The lot in Chicago. The rights, that was just the beginning. I nodded, holding his gaze. That was insurance. But good business sometimes requires going beyond insurance. Sometimes it requires acquisitions. Eleanor looked from Derek to me and back to Derek. What is she saying? What has this woman bought? She pronounced the word woman as if it were an insect. I took a breath. This was the moment. The silent climax of 6 months of sweat, tears, learning, of getting up every day to prove, mostly to myself, that their words were lies. The Vargas Group, I said, pronouncing the name slowly, has submitted the winning bid for the main asset of the bankruptcy estate. This building. I made a sweeping gesture with my hand, encompassing the glass facade that towered above us. The purchase will be formalized in half an hour before a notary. Everything is legal. Everything is in order. The silence that followed was so profound I could hear the distant hum of city traffic. Eleanor stood motionless. Her eyes, now bare without the sunglasses, widened, scanning my face, my clothes, the car behind me, on a slow, terrible journey toward comprehension. It was not a joke, not a bluff. It was the cold, hard, unappealable reality. The reality she had always believed was her exclusive domain was now turning against her, with my face. No, a threat of a voice escaped her lips. It is not possible. It is ours. It was yours, I corrected gently. Now it is mine. Derek let out a sound somewhere between a growl and a groan. He leaned against the glass wall as if his legs were giving out. You did all of this. The Fulton Market project, the Chicago stuff, this. Me and my partner, I confirmed. We build things. Sometimes to build something new you have to buy the foundations of the old. Especially if the old foundations are in a good location. Eleanor began to tremble, not with fear, but with a pure seething rage that seemed about to make her explode. Her hands clenched into fists. You are a usurper. A shameless social climber. You have taken advantage of our misfortune to rob us. It is immoral. I moved a little closer, until I was just inches from her haggard face. I could smell her expensive perfume, now mixed with the sweat of desperation. Immoral, Eleanor? My voice was now a cutting whisper. What do you call calling a person less than nothing? Predicting that no one would ever want her? Despising everything she was, every dream she had. From the height of your rotten money. I paused, letting each word sink in. That is not immoral. That is just being miserable. And the world sometimes has a curious sense of justice. Your money vanished. Your name is synonymous with failure. And I took a step back, gesturing to encompass the car, the building, the future they represented. I already have everything. Everything I set out to get. Including this building. It was then that she broke. She did not cry. She screamed. A hoarse scream filled with impotent fury. I hate you. I curse you. You are a witch. Eleanor. Stop. Derek interrupted her, his voice tired, dead. He grabbed his mother's arm as she struggled. His eyes met mine. In them there was no longer rage, not even resentment. There was only an infinite exhaustion and a glimmer of something that might, in another life, have been respect. You won, Elena. Leave us alone. Do not worry, Derek, I said. And for the first time a genuine smile, not of triumph but of liberation, appeared on my lips. I do not plan on wasting another second of my time on you. I just came to collect what is mine. I turned to my lawyer. Let us go, Jordan. The notary is waiting. I turned and walked toward the car. I did not look back. I heard Eleanor's ragged, furious sobs, and Derek's low, monotonous voice trying to calm her. They were noises from a world that no longer concerned me. As I got into the Rolls, Jordan, pale but professional, said, That was intense, Vargas. Yes, I replied, starting the engine, a soft, powerful roar. But necessary. Now finally all the loose ends are tied up. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The two movers were loading the last box into their van. Eleanor, her head bowed, was being led by Derek toward a modest car parked further down the street. A dethroned queen and her fallen prince, disappearing into the city's anonymity. To the notary's office? Jordan asked. Yes, I nodded, putting the car in gear. We have a future to sign. And as the car glided away smoothly, leaving behind the building that would soon bear a plaque with my name, I did not feel euphoria. I felt peace. A deep, complete silence within me. The voices had finally gone quiet. Eleanor's with its venom, Derek's with its indifference, even my own, the one that had whispered doubts for so long. Now there was only one voice, clear, confident, the master of its own destiny. My voice. The voice of Elena Vargas. And the story was finally beginning. Did you enjoy this story? Leave a comment and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. More tales are on the way.